For decades, we have explored the stars not only in search of planets and signals, but also anomalies. These rare moments when something in space refuses to obey known laws. And now the James Webb Space Telescope may have discovered just such an anomaly. What began as a routine observation of the third interstellar object ever recorded in our solar system, Tri-Atlas, turned into something much stranger, darker, and infinitely more important. Because deep in the cold abyss beyond Mars, the telescope detected something it should not have found. Not just light, but artificial light. A glow that does not behave like a comet or asteroid. A signature that defies known laws of reflection or refraction. And now astronomers and astrophysicists are haunted by one question that chills the soul. What is the Atlas III really? Stay with us as we delve into the data that reignited the oldest and most terrifying question of all. Are we alone? 3 Atlas was first spotted as a faint speck at the edge of the solar system, moving on a trajectory that no local body could replicate. He was clearly interstellar, born beyond the gravitational field of our sun, drifting silently in our vicinity. At first, it was perceived as a cosmic rarity, like its predecessors, Oumuamua and Borisov. But even in the earliest images, something seemed strange. Unlike most interstellar objects, Tri-Atlas was unusually bright, and there was no logical explanation for it. Its brightness did not match the assessments of its size or composition. It shone with abnormal stability. Its light did not dim as expected, nor did it flare up with signs of gas or dust emission. Traditional comets typically shine with bursts as their icy components evaporate, but this object remained steady, as if it had an internal source of energy. Telescopes around the world turned to gaze at it, and the Webb, with its unparalleled ability to observe in the infrared spectrum, was drawn in to decipher this mystery. What it saw changed everything. The James Webb Space Telescope, located 1,000,000 miles from Earth at the Lagrange point, was designed to see the invisible, piercing through the brightness of stars and revealing what is hidden in the shadows. Its gaze on the 3 Atlas was meant to clarify the situation. Instead, he only intensified the confusion. The telescope's instruments captured centralized thermal radiation that did not correspond to any natural reflection of sunlight. Usually, a comet shines due to sunlight reflecting off dust and ice. But the Tri-Atlas showed an internal thermal signal, something that radiated from its core outward. It was not scattered light, it was emitted light. The thermal map revealed a pattern that did not match known distributions of natural objects. It pulsed weakly and irregularly, and, most alarmingly, it seemed to repeat cyclically. This barely noticeable repeating rhythm suggested design rather than randomness. Some scientists from NASA and the European Space Agency proposed exotic explanations. Radioactive decay, subsurface friction, alien isotopes. But as new data came in, these theories began to collapse. The only consistent explanation that remained was one that no one wanted to record. This object could be controlled. With the accumulation of data from the Webb, the Hubble telescope, and ground observatories, the profile of an object known as the Three-Eyed Atlas began to emerge, which resembled no known celestial body. His trajectory was too precise to be chaotic, as if he were choosing his path, finally adjusting his course through gravitational pits. Its rotation was unusually stable, with a swaying motion that contradicted standard inertial drift, and the lack of comments on its movement, even when passing near solar radiation, indicated a shell or protective casing, possibly something that shielded it from heat. Then the most controversial discovery occurred. Albedo, or the reflectivity of its surface, was measured as nearly perfect in some areas, approaching polished metal rather than stone, ice, or dust. The consequences of this shock stunned the astronomical community. If it is metallic, structured, and emits energy, then we are no longer observing a natural object. We are observing technology. Suddenly, the term probe began to whisper in the corridors. A beacon, a device, even an artifact. The idea that this could be an alien spaceship no longer remained within the confines of conspiracy forums. It now quietly circulated in institutional emails behind encrypted walls. Perhaps the most convincing evidence lay not in thermal emissions, trajectories, or strange metallic signatures. It was light. Photometric analysis revealed something sinister. The light emanating from the Three-Eyed Atlas was focused into a narrow spectral band. In other words, it was not a broad natural reflection of sunlight, but a controlled emission of specific wavelengths. This is exactly what we do with LED arrays, laser communication systems, and spacecraft signal beacons. Moreover, this spectrum included frequencies often used in communication and navigation systems on Earth. Furthermore, the intensity of the light seemed to slightly respond to solar radiation, as if some onboard system was adjusting it in real time. It flickered not by chance, but with a strange intermittent pulse. Astronomers processed the data through known signal models. The results were uncertain, but not useless. Some claimed the pulses resembled binary sequences. Others said it could be a rotating power source, but the conclusion was undeniable. It was not a passive object. It was doing something purposeful, and we were watching it in real time. As data came in, a group of astrophysicists from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Harvard University conducted a deep analysis of the signals emitted by the three-eyed atlas. At first glance, the frequencies seemed random, just noise scattered across the spectrum. But when they applied Fourier transformations to extract cyclic patterns, something unexpected emerged. In the noise, like a whisper beneath chaos, a structured repeating impulse was found, too precise to be natural. It was not standard binary code or typical modulation used in human technologies, but it had an undeniable imprint of intentional coding. Some speculated that it could be a beacon, a repeating transmission intended for non-earthly receivers. Others proposed a theory of telemetry, a constant stream of data sent back to the place from which this object came. The uncertainty lay in the following. Whatever the message was, it had not changed since the network first recorded it. It seemed that the three atlas were not trying to communicate with us, but with someone else, and perhaps that someone had already heard him. News of the discovery quickly spread to the highest levels of scientific and defense institutions. A confidential report that circulated within NASA and then leaked to an unknown journalist revealed that high-ranking officials are already coordinating with global space agencies to determine whether Tri-Atlas poses a threat. Some scientists claimed it was harmless, perhaps an ancient probe, centuries old, moving along a predetermined path through the stars. Others were not so optimistic. They asked questions that no one could answer. If it broadcasts, then who is receiving it? If he has light emissions, does he also have an engine? If he is here by design, then why now? The report mentioned the possibility, albeit unlikely, that Tri-Atlas is not just passing by, but observing, tracking planetary alignments, electromagnetic fields, or even advanced civilizations. This possibility ignited panic backstage, for if this object is not alone, something else that sent it may be approaching. Further studies of the brightness of Tri-Atlas led to a revolutionary hypothesis. The object not only emits energy, it collects it. The way the light flow of the object fluctuated depending on its proximity to the sun, combined with the obvious absence of chemical reactions, supported the idea that it might use a solar assembly or photon absorption system embedded in its surface. A group of theorists led by Lowe suggested that the dust cloud around the object could serve a dual purpose, hiding its artificial structure and acting as a medium for absorbing solar radiation. If this is true, it would mean that the Tri-Atlas is a self-sustaining device designed for endless travel through deep space, recharging as it moves from star to star. This concept aligns with well-known theoretical models of interstellar probes, machines that can remain in a dormant state for centuries, activating only upon reaching a star system worthy of exploration. And if our solar system triggered this activation, it means the message was received. As international space agencies sought answers, one truth became increasingly clear. We are not ready. Despite decades of speculation about contact with extraterrestrial civilizations, our systems, political, scientific, philosophical, are completely unprepared for what an object known as Tri-Atlas might represent. No official statements were made, but internal documents leaked from agencies in France, Japan, and Brazil hinted at similar conclusions. This object may not just be an anomaly, but the first slow contact. And unlike what we were shown in Hollywood, there was neither landing nor sudden appearance in the sky, nor instant answers. Only data, only light, only silence. The network continues to observe the object every day, and every answer it provides seems to generate two more questions. If this is contact, it happens on their terms, not ours. Quiet, remote, unsettling. And this could be the most terrifying of all, because what we observe may not be an invitation. It could be surveillance, and we may have already been noticed. When astronomers thought that Tri-Atlas had established a predictable trajectory, something unexpected happened. Its brightness suddenly increased. This was not a gradual increase caused by proximity to the sun. It was a sudden burst captured in real time by the James Webb Telescope and confirmed by several ground observatories. The brightness of the object increased by almost 40% in less than 2 minutes, then stabilized at a new high level. No natural explanation matched these data. There were no signs of interaction with the solar wind, no impact, nor fragmentary dissociation. It seemed as if someone or something simply flipped a switch. The splash was visible, but it also caused a change in the object's thermal signal, as if systems had been activated. Theorists proposed a frightening hypothesis that this object had entered an active phase, possibly due to its proximity to our star or under the influence of our observations. And if this surge was a deliberate act, it was intentionally visible. Soon after the abnormal increase in brightness, orbital calculations from several space agencies detected something else. The 3I Atlas no longer accurately followed their intended trajectory. He slightly altered his course, unnoticed but measurable. Only gravity could not explain this change. Even the pressure of solar radiation, often mentioned as an excuse for small course alterations of light objects, made no sense. This shift was intentional, and even more alarming was the direction of the new trajectory, deeper into the solar system at an angle that brought it closer to Earth's orbital plane. The object was no longer just passing by. It had effectively changed its course. Some scientists urged caution, calling it a gravitational anomaly, but others viewed the change as a maneuver, a subtle course correction that neither a comet nor an asteroid would ever make. And if the Tri-A Atlas is capable of even limited thrust or navigation, it meant that we were no longer just observing a relic. We were watching a moving object with a specific purpose. When this object entered the range of the spectroscopic instruments of the Webb and Hubble telescopes, scientists began to identify elements and compounds that caused increasing concern. High reflective alloys and rare Earth elements were found, and surprisingly, absorption spectral lines resembling compounds never before recorded in our periodic table. These were not the materials one would find in a frozen piece of interstellar rock. They were artificially created, or at least synthesized under conditions unknown to be natural. One of the spectral profiles did not match any known chemical processes, but closely resembled theoretical compounds proposed in quantum materials laboratories. Substances that were thought to exist only under the influence of strong magnetic fields or in conditions of quantum compression. This discovery implied either an incredible age of the object, suggesting it predates human civilization by thousands of years, or a highly advanced recent production by a civilization far superior to ours. The nature of the material spoke louder than any signals. Even if we couldn't decipher the message, the envoy himself was abnormal. With growing evidence pointing to an unnatural origin, governments and agencies began to respond. Not publicly, but with obvious caution. The encryption level on the observatory networks was increased. Research groups were quietly redistributed. Several countries noted a sharp and unexplained increase in satellite reconfigurations. Countries engaged in space research began holding closed discussions about possible actions. A leaked document from the International Defense Consortium suggested that the 3 atlases might not be the only visitors, but rather a scout. The unusual structure of the object, its stable rotation, and its obvious ability to function over interstellar distances indicated a design suitable for long-term research probes. But if this was a scout, what was it searching for? And, more troublingly, what might happen next? In universities, observatories, and military command centers, a frightening consensus was forming. We are no longer alone in the universe, and the first contact may not be a conversation, but an assessment. When speculation reached a critical point, a brave team from the CD Institute decided to take a risk that no one else dared to. They transmitted a directed radio pulse directly to the presumed location of the 3 atlases. The message contained universal mathematical constants, the periodic table, and basic visual representations of humanity. It was intended as a cosmic handshake, a cautious greeting. Days passed, then a week, without a reply. But just as the experiment was about to be archived as another unanswered call into the darkness, one of the monitoring stations in Chile detected something strange. A narrowband return pulse, frequency shifted and distorted, yet clearly synchronized with the original message. It was not a response in a language. It was not an echo. It was a signal, a return response with enough variation to suggest it was not a passive reflection. It had been processed. It had been sent back. But what shocked the SETI team the most was not the content of the signal, but its timing. The response arrived exactly 72 hours after transmission, to the second. This meant that someone not only received our message, but also calculated the delay, responding deliberately. After detecting the return signal, observatories around the world began to encounter technical anomalies. Infrared web tools have shown chaotic thermal mapping for the first time since launch. Hubble's gyroscopic sensors detected micro-fluctuations despite stable orientation. Ground-based telescopes experienced what was initially dismissed as software glitches, mismatched star maps, unexplained pixel distortions, and frozen data streams, precisely when they were focused on 3 objects in the atlas. But these glitches were not random. They appeared in synchronized windows, as if someone or something didn't want us to look too closely. A theory emerged from a black operations center, deeply buried in the European Space Agency. The object didn't just emit signals, it jammed us, selectively intervening. The consequences were stunning. The passive observer does not hide their identity. The scout does. If the subject actively controlled what we could see, and when we could see it, then we did not observe them. We were allowed to observe. And then, silence. A few days after the signal and technical failures, updates from the web began to be delayed, restricted, and ultimately redirected. Public logs were no longer accessible. The European Space Agency issued a vague statement about recalibrating the instruments. NASA simply stopped commenting on the events. Even reputable journals that closely monitored Atlas objects began retracting articles or publishing neutral summaries without details. The astrophysics community found itself divided. Some believed that the agencies were working on validating the discovery before its public announcement. Others believed in something darker, that the truth had already been confirmed and was now being suppressed. Several remaining independent observatories began publishing raw data streams for the general public, but they were quickly overwhelmed by a flood of misinformation and speculation. What was once a global scientific mystery has now become a strategic asset. And history showed what happens when governments announce the classification of a discovery. The truth dies in silence. In a final attempt to understand what they were observing, a coalition of astronomers and mathematicians turned to pattern recognition and probability theory. They no longer sought communication. They were searching for evidence of intentions. It was then that they discovered the most horrifying pattern of all. The object's path through the solar system, seemingly natural at first glance, actually resembled a Fibonacci spiral when mapped according to the positions of the planets. An ancient spiral of proportional beauty found everywhere in nature and, strangely, in many earthly communication protocols. Moreover, the timing of his course corrections, light flashes, and even responses to pings correlated with sequences of prime numbers. The probability of such a coincidence in nature was astronomically low. These patterns were chosen. This meant that the object Tri-Atlas was not just passing through the solar system. It navigated with mathematical precision, as if following a map or schedule. Some theorists were now whispering the unimaginable. It might not be interstellar probing. It could have been an interstellar message, not made of sounds or symbols, but of behavior. And we have just deciphered the first word. As the dust of confusion begins to settle, one truth remains undeniable. 3 Atlas was never just a stone. From the abnormal light it emitted to the signal it sent, from rare materials to the carefully calculated change in trajectory, every detail of this mystery points to one uncomfortable conclusion. We have not been alone for a long time, and perhaps we were never meant to know this. The James Webb Telescope, built to glimpse the birth of galaxies, may have instead caught a glimpse of something designed to look back, something ancient, purposeful, and observing, not from the safety of a distant star system, but from the threshold of our own celestial neighbor. Yet silence reigns. Agencies refuse to speak. Data is concealed. It seems the world is not ready, but we have seen the light. We tracked the path. And now we ask a question that frightens even the most rational minds. What will happen next? Did the 3 Atlases simply pass by, cataloging our little world before continuing their journey? Or was this just the first of many? A probe leading to something greater, something waiting for a signal to act. Ultimately, it may not matter whether the 3 Atlas was a machine or something entirely different. What matters is that it came, saw, and responded. And now, somewhere in the cold, endless darkness, something may turn its attention to the blue planet that blinked first. Perhaps the countdown has already begun, and the universe reminds us once again that we are not the center. We are the observed.